The story began in a beautiful valley where animals of every kind lived together in peace. But they all shared one fear, an enormous and terrifying wolf that hunted under the cover of darkness. Its reign of terror spread across the entire valley. Then one day, everything changed. A group of gigantic creatures known as Dizzo arrived. They looked like walking gardens, with massive bodies covered in branches and leaves. Unlike the wolf, the Dizzo were wise, gentle, and kind. From their branches, they shared magical pods with every animal. These pods gave animals the ability to change their appearance and understand one another's language. For the first time, the valley's animals were truly united. As a result, the wolf began losing its grip on the valley. Furious, it swore revenge. Using one of the magical pods, the wolf transformed into a terrifying monster known as the firewolf. Consumed by rage, the firewolf attacked the Dizzo. It killed 4 of them and forced the survivors to flee into the woods. Then it brought down parts of the surrounding mountains, creating a massive dam that divided the valley. With the animals separated once again, the firewolf's rule returned stronger than ever. Years later, we meet a young puku named Olly. As Olly explained, he'd always been curious about the world around him. When he was younger, he became fascinated by what existed beneath the river's surface. After several failed attempts, he eventually built a homemade diving helmet that allowed him to breathe underwater. The moment he entered the river, he was amazed. A whole hidden world existed beneath the water, filled with strange and beautiful creatures he had never seen before. That's when he spotted a giant booglefish gliding through the water. The creature was incredibly beautiful, but it was swimming straight toward him. Before anything could happen, Olly's father rushed in and pulled him safely out of the river. Back home, both of his parents scolded him for wandering beyond the island. They warned him that the world outside was far more dangerous than he realized. A few days later, the Puku tribe held a huge festival to celebrate the berries they had gathered for winter. During the celebration, Olly noticed a young Javan hiding in the bushes. At first, both of them were nervous and frightened, but gathering his courage, Olly approached the little creature and showed her how to pick berries properly. Since she had never learned how, she quickly copied everything he did. Before long, she was collecting berries just as skillfully as Olly, and happily eating them. Olly couldn't help smiling, but then things took a turn for the worse. The young Javan excitedly called her parents over and showed them the trick she had learned. Soon, more and more Javan arrived. Within minutes, dozens of them were picking berries and eating them as fast as they could. Olly's father watched the entire disaster unfold, and in that moment, he realized that Olly had accidentally created a huge problem for their tribe. The Javan were now consuming the food the Puku had spent months gathering for winter. If this continued, the tribe would have nothing left to survive the cold season, and that was exactly why, in the present day, Olly had been secretly collecting berries on his own, right before a Javan suddenly attacked him. When Olly returned home, he found his parents and the rest of the Puku tribe deeply worried. Their food reserves were running out fast, and if they couldn't find more berries soon, surviving the winter would be nearly impossible. Trying to help, Olly offered his father some seeds from the berries he had gathered, but his dad was still upset about everything that had happened, and simply walked away without saying a word. That hurt Olly more than anything. Then he remembered something. The Javan were easily startled by bright flashes of light. Using pieces of broken glass he had collected, Olly climbed a nearby hill and reflected sunlight directly into their eyes. The trick worked perfectly, and the Javan scattered in every direction. But just as he thought he'd solved the problem, the young Javan he had taught years ago suddenly attacked him. During the struggle, Olly slipped and fell into a dark cave. Inside, he discovered something unbelievable, a magical pod. Frightened and frustrated, Olly blamed the Javan for all the trouble in his life as he stumbled toward it. Outside the cave, his parents and the other Puku called out, asking if he was okay. Moments later, Olly finally climbed back out, but something was terribly wrong. He had transformed into a Javan. The moment the tribe saw him, they panicked and ran. Olly desperately tried to explain that he was still himself, somehow trapped inside a Javan's body, but nobody believed him. His parents were convinced that a Javan had eaten their son and was somehow speaking with Olly's voice. Before he could explain any further, the frightened tribe attacked him. Terrified, Olly lost his footing and fell off the cliff. When he woke up, the nightmare was still real. He was still trapped inside a Javan's body. Standing nearby was a young Javan named Ivy, the same one Olly had taught how to pick berries when they were kids. She had arrived with her 2 sisters, and together they tried to convince Olly to come with them to Javan Rock, their home. They believed someone there might be able to help him, but Olly wanted nothing to do with them. At the same time, he was shocked to discover something else. Ever since the transformation, he could suddenly understand Ivy and even the language of the valley's smaller creatures. Then Ivy sensed danger. A pack of wolves was approaching. Without wasting a second, she covered Olly in animal dung before running off. As disgusting as it was, the strong smell completely masked his scent, preventing the wolves from tracking him. It wasn't wasn't exactly pleasant, but it saved his life. Later, while washing himself in the river, Olly came face to face with a familiar creature, the giant booglefish he had seen as a child. To his surprise, he could understand the fish as well. After hearing Olly's story about falling into the cave and touching the magical pod, the friendly fish told him about another magical pod hidden near a dead tree behind some bushes. For the first time since his transformation, Olly felt hopeful. If he could find that pod, maybe he could turn back into a puku. Determined to restore his original body, he immediately set off in search of it. Along the way, Ivy caught up with him. She wanted to talk, but Olly wasn't interested. Right now, all he cared about was finding the magical pod and becoming himself again. Before long, the two of them reached the location. Unfortunately, Ivy wasn't taking any of this seriously. Thinking the whole thing sounded ridiculous, she walked up to the magical pod and jokingly said, "What? Touch this thing and you'll turn into a puku?" The second the words left her mouth, Ivy transformed into a puku. She stared at her new body in complete shock. Fear quickly replaced her laughter as she realized this was no joke. Olly, meanwhile, was furious. That pod had been his chance to become himself again, and now Ivy had used it first. All he wanted was to get away from her and continue searching for another solution. But Ivy wasn't leaving. Now that she was trapped in a puku's body, she needed to find a way back too. Whether Olly liked it or not, their journey had just become a lot more complicated. With no other options left, Olly returned to the booglefish and asked if there was another magical pod somewhere in the valley. Ivy was stunned. Not only could Olly understand the fish, but now she could understand the language of every creature in the valley as well. The booglefish told them about another magical pod located near the Great Waterfall, close to a legendary figure known as Great Joe. The journey would be long, dangerous, and high up in the mountains. The fish was about to warn them about the dangers ahead, but before he could finish, Olly and Ivy were already on their way. Olly quickly discovered that living in a Javan's body wasn't as easy as it looked. His new wings kept throwing off his balance, making it difficult to climb the rocky cliffs. Ivy repeatedly suggested that he simply fly. The problem was, he had absolutely no idea how. As they traveled through the wilderness, a pack of wolves suddenly attacked them. The two barely escaped and ran into a nearby cave, but that cave wasn't safe either. The wolves refused to enter because the cave was home to deadly root snakes, highly venomous creatures that looked exactly like tangled tree roots. Now they were trapped. Wolves waited outside. Poisonous snakes waited inside. With danger on both sides, Olly and Ivy decided to carefully navigate through the cave and find another exit. Luckily, becoming a puku had given Ivy an incredible sense of smell. By following different scents, she could tell the difference between actual roots and hidden snakes. Working together, they slowly made their way through the darkness. Eventually, they reached the other side and celebrated their narrow escape, but their relief didn't last long. The wolves outside suddenly began howling. The noise woke the root snakes. Within seconds, dozens of venomous snakes started slithering toward them. Olly and Ivy sprinted for their lives and barely escaped the cave. Unfortunately, they found themselves trapped again. Beyond the exit was a massive canyon, and the only thing keeping them from falling was a dead tree branch hanging over the edge. Meanwhile, the snakes kept getting closer. Olly froze. He had no idea what to do. Then Ivy made a shocking decision. She shoved him off the branch and jumped after him. The two plummeted into the canyon below. Olly panicked as the ground rushed toward them, but Ivy remained calm. She kept telling him the same thing. Trust yourself. You can fly. At first, nothing happened. Then suddenly, Olly's instincts kicked in. His wings spread wide. For the first time, he truly flew and safely carried both of them onto a nearby cliff. Olly couldn't stop smiling. After struggling with his new body for so long, he had finally learned how to use his wings. Later, when Olly became hungry, Ivy offered him a plant root to eat. He looked at it in confusion. The idea of eating roots seemed strange to him. That's when Ivy revealed something heartbreaking. After Great Joe disappeared from the valley, food became incredibly scarce for the Javan. Starvation spread across their community. She had lost her parents and many others she cared about because there simply wasn't enough food to survive. Then one day, everything changed. A young puku showed her how to harvest and eat berries. That discovery gave her people an entirely new food source and saved countless lives. As soon as Olly heard the story, he realized something. The young puku Ivy was talking about was him. For the first time, Olly began seeing the situation from the Javan's perspective. They weren't stealing food because they were cruel. They were simply trying to survive. As night fell, the two decided to rest on the mountaintop and continue their journey the next morning. When the sun rose, they finally spotted the Great Waterfall in the distance. Excited, Olly and Ivy headed straight toward it. But when they arrived, they discovered they weren't alone. A pack of wolves was already there. The Great Waterfall stood deep inside wild wolf territory, making the next part of their journey even more dangerous than before. Just then, the booglefish arrived. Relieved to see him, Olly and Ivy quickly asked for his help. By now, the boogle considered them true friends, so he agreed without hesitation. To distract the wolves, the boogle climbed onto a rock and pretended to be dead. As soon as the wolves rushed toward what looked like an easy meal, he suddenly leaped back into the river and swam away, leading the entire pack back after him. The distraction worked perfectly. While the wolves chased the fish, Olly and Ivy hurried toward the magical pod, but the moment they reached it, a new problem appeared. There was only one pod. Almost immediately, an argument broke out. Both of them wanted to return to their original bodies. Both of them wanted to help their people, and neither was willing to give up the opportunity. During the argument, Olly finally revealed the truth. He admitted that he was the young Puku, who had taught Ivy how to harvest berries years ago. At first, he thought he had helped her, but that single mistake had changed everything. After Ivy shared the secret with her people, the Javan began eating the Puku tribe's food supply. The shortage that followed nearly destroyed Olly's community, and his father became so disappointed that he eventually stopped talking to him altogether. One careless decision had cost Olly almost everything. Before either of them could decide who would use the pod, the wolves returned. Panicked, Olly and Ivy called out for the Bukul's help. Then disaster struck. The two accidentally fell onto the magical pod at the same time. A burst of magic flashed around them, and suddenly both of them transformed into Bugelfish. When the real Bugel arrived, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Now there were 3 Bugels. After recovering from the shock, he revealed something important. There was another group of magical pods located above the great waterfall. Hearing that, the trio immediately continued their journey. As they traveled upstream, the Bugel opened up about his past. For years, he had lived completely alone in the river. As far as he knew, he was the only creature of his kind left, and the loneliness had been unbearable. Eventually, they reached the base of the enormous waterfall. Far above them, they could see dozens of magical pods growing near the top. Excited, Olly tried swimming upstream by himself. It didn't go well. The current was simply too powerful. Realizing he couldn't do it alone, all 3 of them joined forces and began pushing their way through the rushing water together. The journey was brutal, and it became even worse when they encountered giant stone bears, massive creatures that lived beneath the river. The enormous beasts attacked without warning. Somehow, through teamwork and a little luck, the trio managed to escape and continue climbing toward the top of the waterfall. But another danger was already waiting for them. A pack of wolves had claimed the area above the falls. Olly had no idea how they were going to get past them. Then something unexpected happened. One of the wolf cubs slipped from the edge of a cliff and became trapped on a tree branch hanging over the canyon. The Bugel immediately saw an opportunity. "We can use this distraction and slip past them." The wolves were too busy trying to save the cub to notice anything else, but Olly couldn't ignore what was happening. Below the cub, hungry stone bears were already gathering, waiting for it to fall. Despite the danger, Olly chose to help. With Ivy and the Bugel assisting him, he managed to rescue the young wolf just in time. The wolves were stunned. Instead of attacking, they simply gathered their cub and quietly left. For the first time, Olly's kindness had earned him allies instead of enemies. With the path finally clear, the trio reached the magical pods. Olly and Ivy immediately used them to return to their original forms. At last, they were themselves again. But the Bugel had other plans. Instead of changing back into another fish, he transformed into something far more terrifying, a monstrous firewolf. Olly and Ivy froze in horror. The creature ignited its own body in flames, surrounding itself with fire until it became a living nightmare. In that instant, Olly understood the truth. This wasn't just any monster. This was the same firewolf that had destroyed the valley long ago, the same creature that had driven away the Dizzo, the same monster that had divided the entire world. Shocked, Ivy demanded answers. "You built the dam. You drove Great Joe away. You caused all of this. Why? Why would you make everyone suffer?" For a moment, the firewolf remained silent. Then he finally told them his story. When he was young, his own siblings abandoned him because he was smaller and weaker than the rest of the pack. They left him behind to die. No one came to help him. No one cared. And that day, something inside him broke. From that moment on, he swore revenge against the entire valley. He vowed to burn everything to the ground and force whoever survived to live under his rule. The firewolf then revealed an even darker secret. Long ago, when he first tried to conquer the valley, the Dizzo had stopped him using the magical pods. They trapped his spirit inside the body of a Bugelfish, leaving him powerless and stranded in the river. And ever since then, he had been patiently waiting for a gullible fool to help him escape and reclaim his true form. Without realizing it, Olly and Ivy had just given the valley's greatest monster exactly what he wanted. Desperate to stop the monster, Ivy grabbed a magical pod and tried to turn the firewolf back into a Bugelfish, but she never got the chance. The firewolf attacked first. With a single strike, he badly injured Ivy before setting the remaining magical pods on fire. Within moments, every pod was destroyed, and the firewolf disappeared into the wilderness. Seeing Ivy wounded broke Olly's heart, but there was no time to waste. He knew exactly where he needed to take her. Javan Rock, the home of the Javan. If anyone could save her, it would be them. Despite being completely exhausted, Olly lifted Ivy and began dragging her up the steep mountain trails. Hour after hour, he pushed himself forward. His muscles burned, his legs trembled, but he refused to quit. Finally, after an exhausting climb, he reached Javan Rock. Ivy's sisters spotted them immediately and rushed over to help. Only then did Olly's body finally give out. He collapsed unconscious. When he woke up later, Ivy was nowhere to be seen. His heart sank. He feared the worst. For a moment, he thought she hadn't survived. Then suddenly, he heard her voice. Olly looked up and saw Ivy standing there completely healthy, holding a basket of berries for him. The relief was overwhelming. For the first time in days, he smiled. But even then, something still weighed heavily on his mind. He confessed that his own tribe saw him as a burden. Every mistake he'd made seemed to have caused more problems for the people he loved. Ivy understood exactly how he felt. She took him through Javan Rock and showed him something he had never seen before. Families laughing together, children learning to fly, an entire community thriving. Then Ivy reminded him of something important. You taught us how to harvest berries. Without that knowledge, my people would have starved years ago. What Olly had always viewed as a mistake had actually saved countless lives. For the first time, he began to see himself differently. Soon, the young Javan children started playing around him, treating him like a hero instead of a problem. But their peaceful moment didn't last long. In the distance, a massive cloud of smoke rose into the sky. The firewolf had started a wildfire. An entire section of the woods was burning, and ash filled the air as the flames spread across the valley. At first, the Javan elders decided to focus only on protecting their own people. They ordered everyone to stay inside their nests and wait for the danger to pass. But Ivy and her sisters refused to stand by and do nothing. They convinced the entire tribe to help the other animals of the valley. Before long, hundreds of Javan took to the skies alongside Olly. Together, they began evacuating every creature they could find. They guided the smaller animals toward the river, while helping the larger ones escape the advancing flames. Soon, another unexpected group arrived. The wolves. At first, everyone panicked. But instead of attacking, the wolves approached peacefully. The wolf pack remembered how Olly had saved their cub. Now it was their turn to return the favor. Together, predators and prey worked side by side. Small animals crossed the river using makeshift rafts built from fallen branches, while larger creatures swam across on their own. For the first time in generations, the valley's animals were united. When Olly finally reached the other side of the river, he found his parents and the rest of the Puku tribe waiting there. His mother and father were overjoyed to see him alive, but there was still a problem. The Puku were terrified of the other animals and didn't want them entering their territory. Olly stepped forward. He told them everything. The truth about the firewolf, the truth about Great Joe, the truth about the magical pods, and how he had personally experienced life in another creature's body. He explained that every species in the valley had suffered, and every species had struggled to survive. Most importantly, he made them understand one simple truth. Their strength came from standing together, not from staying apart. After hearing his words, Olly's father finally changed his mind. The Puku welcomed the other animals into their territory, and together they escaped the wildfire before the flames could reach them. But their victory was short-lived. The firewolf had found them. Burning with rage, the monster emerged from the smoke and marched directly toward the survivors. Panic spread through the crowd. Every animal knew that if the firewolf wasn't stopped now, the valley would be destroyed forever. Then Olly remembered something. Years ago, Great Joe had defeated the firewolf using the power of a magical pod. Maybe he could do the same. Following that idea, Olly rushed to the deep pit where his journey had first begun, the cave where he had discovered the magical pod that transformed him. When he arrived, he found only a withered, lifeless pod. There was nothing left. For a moment, all hope seemed lost. Then Olly looked up and quietly prayed to Great Joe for help, and something incredible happened. Right before his eyes, a brand new magical pod began to grow. A fresh pod had been born. Without hesitation, Olly used its power. A brilliant light surrounded him. His body began to grow larger and larger. Branches stretched from his arms. Roots formed beneath his feet. And within seconds, Olly transformed into a mighty Dizzo. The same legendary guardians who had once protected the valley. Now transformed into a mighty Dizzo, Olly charged straight at the firewolf. The battle that followed was unlike anything the valley had ever seen. Using his newfound powers, Olly unleashed a massive wave of water that slammed into the firewolf and hurled him across the valley. The attack extinguished the monster's flames, leaving him vulnerable for a brief moment. Seeing an opportunity, Ivy grabbed one of the magical pods from Olly and rushed toward the firewolf. Her plan was simple: turn him back into a harmless booglefish and end the fight once and for all. But the firewolf reacted at the last second. His flames reignited, destroying the pod before Ivy could use it. Then he launched a furious counterattack. A blast of fire engulfed Olly, setting the giant Dizzo ablaze. The pain was unbearable, but the real problem was even worse. Olly realized he couldn't bring himself to kill the firewolf. Even after everything the monster had done, Olly refused to become a killer. At the same time, another disaster was unfolding. The ancient dam that had divided the valley for years was beginning to crack. The entire structure was on the verge of collapse. Ivy and the other animals watched helplessly as Olly struggled against the firewolf. Then Olly made his final decision. He wrapped his massive vine-like tentacles around the firewolf and held him tightly. The firewolf fought to break free, but Olly wouldn't let go. With all the strength he had left, he smashed through the weakening dam. The structure exploded apart, a tremendous flood burst through the valley, and together, Olly and the firewolf plunged into the canyon below. The sacrifice saved everyone, but it came at a heartbreaking cost. As the waters settled, the valley was finally free, yet the animals mourned the hero who had given everything to protect them. For a time, it seemed that Olly was gone forever, but thanks to his courage, something incredible happened. With the firewolf defeated, peace finally returned to the valley. Animals that had once feared and hated each other now lived side by side. The barriers between them were gone, and before long, the legendary Duzzo returned as well. Their arrival brought new life and hope to the valley. Great Joe had finally come home. Because the Javan lived among the Duzzo, Ivy and her people were able to return to the home they had lost long ago. Then one day, Ivy noticed something unbelievable. Sitting high above on Great Joe's back was Olly, alive. Overwhelmed with joy, Ivy rushed toward him and wrapped him in a hug. Olly smiled and explained that the great Duzzo had saved him before it was too late. He wasn't gone after all. Soon afterward, Olly reunited with his mother and father, who couldn't have been happier to see their son again. At last, the valley was whole. Different species lived together. Old enemies became friends, and a future that once seemed impossible had finally become reality. Through kindness, courage, and selflessness, young Olly succeeded where no one else could. He defeated the firewolf, united the valley, and brought hope back to an entire world.